What if I told you that the moment you stop chasing him, the moment you step back and let silence fill the space where your words used to be, something shifts? Not in him, necessarily, but in you. That the endless reaching, the constant explaining, the hoping he will finally see you the way you see him, might actually be the very thing keeping you from being seen at all. There's a kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to make someone understand you, from offering yourself again and again to someone who has not learned to receive. And maybe you have felt this exhaustion so deeply that it has become part of your identity, woven into the way you move through the world. A quiet ache you carry in your chest, a tension in your throat from all the things you wanted to say, but never quite landed. You are not alone in this. There are people who love with their whole being, who give attention and presence as though it were the most natural thing in the world, and who find themselves confused, hurt, bewildered when that same attention is not returned. They wonder what they did wrong. They replay conversations in their minds, searching for the moment they lost him, the phrase that turned him away, the gesture that made him pull back. They believe, somewhere deep inside, that if they could just find the right words, the right tone, the right approach, everything would change. He would finally understand. He would finally meet them where they are. But what if the problem is not the words? What if the problem is the chasing itself? Carl Jung spoke often about the inner world, about the vast and intricate landscape that exists beneath the surface of our daily lives. He understood that some people live primarily in that inner world, that their reality is shaped not only by what happens around them, but by what happens within them. For these people, relationships are not casual. They're not light. Every connection carries weight. Every interaction is felt deeply. Every silence is interpreted. Every distance is experienced as a kind of wound. And when they love someone, they do not love halfway. They love with attention, with care, with a kind of presence that can be overwhelming to those who have not learned to live at that depth. But here is the paradox. The more you chase, the more you offer, the more you try to close the distance between you and him, the more you may actually push him away. Not because you're doing something wrong, not because you're too much or too intense or too needy, but because the very act of chasing creates a dynamic that makes it impossible for him to come toward you. When you are always moving toward him, he never has to move at all. He can stay still. He can remain passive. He can let you do all the work of the relationship, all the emotional labor, all the reaching and hoping and trying. And in that dynamic, you become smaller. You become the one who needs, the one who lacks, the one who is always asking for something he is not giving. This is not about blame. It is not about painting him as the villain and you as the victim. It is about recognizing a pattern, a way of relating that many people fall into without even realizing it. You chase because you care. You chase because you believe that love means effort, that connection requires persistence, that if you just try hard enough, he will see you. And maybe he will, but maybe he will not. And maybe the question is not whether he will see you, but whether you are willing to see yourself clearly enough to stop. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is not giving up. Silence is not the same as disappearing or withdrawing in anger or punishing him with your absence. Silence is a kind of presence, a way of holding yourself steady without needing him to validate you. It is the space where you stop performing, stop explaining, stop trying to convince him of your worth. It is the place where you simply are, without apology, without justification, without the constant need to be understood. And in that silence, something remarkable can happen. He may begin to notice you, not because you're doing something different, but because you have stopped doing the thing that made it easy for him to ignore you. Think about the way we move through the world. When something is always available, always within reach, always offering itself to us, we stop valuing it. We take it for granted. We assume it will always be there, so we do not treat it with care. This is not cruelty. This is human nature. We are drawn to what challenges us, what requires us to step forward, what asks something of us. And when you're always chasing him, always making it easy for him, always filling the silence with your words and your presence and your effort, you remove the challenge. You remove the mystery. You remove the space where he might wonder about you, miss you, think about you when you are not there. But when you stop, when you step back, when you let silence do the work, you create a void. And voids have a way of drawing people in. Not always, not guaranteed, but often. Because suddenly, he has to ask himself questions he did not have to ask before. Where did she go? Why is she not reaching out? What is she thinking? What is she feeling? And in those questions, you become real to him again. Not as the person who is always there, always available, always waiting, but as someone with her own life, her own thoughts, her own inner world that he does not have access to unless he chooses to step toward it. This is not a strategy. This is not a manipulation. This is not about playing games or pretending not to care when you do. This is about reclaiming your own center, your own ground, your own sense of self that may have gotten lost in the constant reaching toward him. It is about recognizing that your worth does not depend on his response, that your value is not determined by whether he sees you or not. It is about understanding that you can love someone deeply, truly, fully, and still choose not to chase them. Because love is not the same as pursuit. Love is not the same as convincing someone to love you back. Jung spoke about the persona, the mask we wear in the world, the version of ourselves we present to others in order to be accepted, to fit in, to be seen as we want to be seen. And for many people, especially those who feel things deeply, the persona becomes a kind of performance. They learn to be what others need them to be. They learn to adjust, to accommodate, to make themselves smaller or louder or different depending on what the situation requires. And in relationships, this can become exhausting. You may find yourself constantly adjusting your words, your tone, your needs, your desires, trying to be the version of yourself that he will respond to. Trying to be enough, but not too much. Trying to be present, but not overwhelming. Trying to be loving, but not needy. But what happens when you stop adjusting? What happens when you let the persona fall away and you simply exist as you are without trying to manage his perception of you? What happens when you stop chasing and start being? This is where the silence becomes powerful. Because silence is not a performance. Silence is not trying to be anything. Silence is simply the absence of the constant effort to be seen. And in that absence, you may discover something about yourself that you had forgotten. That you are whole without him. That you are enough without his validation. That your inner world is rich and complex and worthy of your own attention, even if he never gives you his. There's a kind of grief that comes with this realization, because it means letting go of the hope that he will change, that he will suddenly wake up and see you the way you have always wanted to be seen. It means accepting that you cannot make someone meet you at your depth, that you cannot force someone to care in the way you care, that you cannot convince someone to value what you offer if they are not ready or willing or able to receive it. And this grief is real. It is valid. It is not something to be rushed through or dismissed or minimized. It is the grief of releasing a story you told yourself about who he was, about who you were together, about what was possible between you. But on the other side of that grief is something else. A kind of clarity, a kind of peace, a kind of strength that comes from no longer needing him to complete you. Because the truth is, you were never incomplete. You were never broken. You were never too much or not enough. You were simply giving your attention to someone who was not ready to receive it, and you were interpreting his lack of response as a reflection of your worth rather than a reflection of his capacity. And when you stop chasing, when you let silence do the work, you begin to see this. You begin to understand that his inability to meet you is not about you. It is about him, about where he is in his own journey, about what he is able to give, about what he is willing to risk. This does not make a hurt less, but it does change the meaning of the hurt. It shifts it from a wound that confirms your inadequacy to a wound that simply is a natural consequence of loving someone who could not love you back in the way you needed. And there's a kind of dignity in that shift, a kind of self-respect, because you're no longer making yourself smaller to fit into his limitations. You are no longer twisting yourself into shapes that do not feel true in order to earn his attention. You're simply letting yourself be and letting him be and allowing the space between you to reveal what is actually there rather than what you hoped would be there. Jung also spoke about the unconscious, about the parts of ourselves we do not see, the patterns we repeat without awareness, the ways we are driven by forces we do not fully understand. And often, the urge to chase, the compulsion to pursue someone who is pulling away, comes from something deeper than the relationship itself. It comes from old wounds, old fears, old stories about what it means to be loved. Maybe you learned early on that love is something you have to earn, that attention is something you have to work for, that your worth is contingent on how much you can give, how much you can do, how much you can be for someone else. And so you chase, not because this particular person is so extraordinary, but because chasing is the only way you know how to relate. It is the pattern you learned. It is the script you were given. Well, you can write a new script. You can choose a different pattern. You can decide that love, real love, does not require you to chase. That connection, true connection, does not require you to diminish yourself. That being seen, really seen, does not happen through constant effort and explanation, but through presence, through authenticity, through the quiet confidence of someone who knows their own worth and does not need external validation to confirm it. And this is not easy. It is not a switch you flip. It is a process, a gradual unlearning of old habits, a slow reclaiming of your own center, a gentle but firm commitment to yourself that you will no longer abandon your own needs in order to meet someone else's. When you stop chasing and let silence do the work, you are not being passive. You are not giving up. You are not resigning yourself to loneliness or disconnection. You are making a choice. You are choosing to honor yourself, to respect your own time and energy and emotional resources. You are choosing to stop pouring yourself into a space that does not hold you. You are choosing to wait, not for him to change, but for clarity, for truth, for a response that is genuine rather than one you have to coax out of him. Because if he truly wants you, if he truly values you, he will notice your absence. He will feel the shift. He will wonder where you went, and he will reach out, not because you manipulated him into it, but because he genuinely wants to connect. And if he does not reach out, if the silence stretches on and he does not come looking for you, then you have your answer. Not the answer you wanted, perhaps, but the answer you needed, the truth. And the truth, even when it hurts, is always better than the uncertainty of chasing someone who may never turn around. Because the truth allows you to move forward. It allows you to grieve, to heal, to redirect your energy toward people and places and pursuits that actually nourish you. It frees you from the endless loop of hoping and trying and wondering, and it gives you back your life. There is a particular kind of person who struggles with this. The person who feels deeply, who thinks in layers, who experiences relationships not as casual exchanges, but as profound encounters. This person often finds themselves misunderstood, not because they are doing anything wrong, but because their depth makes others uncomfortable. They ask questions that others do not want to answer. They notice things that others prefer to ignore. They seek connection at a level that requires vulnerability, honesty, self-awareness, and not everyone is willing or able to go there. And so they are often labeled as too intense, too serious, too much. They are told to lighten up, to not take things so personally, to relax. And they try. They try to be lighter, to be easier, to be less of whatever it is that seems to push people away. But in doing so, they lose themselves. They lose the very thing that makes them who they are. If you are this kind of person, if you recognize yourself in these words, then you know the particular pain of chasing someone who does not meet you at your depth. You know what it feels like to offer your full presence and receive only fragments in return. You know the exhaustion of trying to explain yourself to someone who is not interested in understanding. You know the loneliness of being with someone and still feeling unseen. And you may have believed for a long time that this is just how it is for you, that you are destined to love people who cannot love you back, that your depth is a curse, a burden, something that makes you difficult to be with. But what if it's not a curse? What if your depth is actually your strength, your gift, the very thing that makes you capable of profound connection, meaningful relationships, and a rich inner life? What if the problem is not that you are too much, but that you have been offering yourself to people who are too little? Not because they are bad people, not because they are wrong or flawed, but simply because they are not where you are. They are not living at the same level of awareness, the same level of emotional honesty, the same level of willingness to be vulnerable and real. And that is okay. They are on their own path, but their path does not have to be yours. When you stop chasing and let silence do the work, you are not punishing him. You are not trying to make him feel guilty or to manipulate him into missing you. You are simply stepping back and allowing reality to be what it is. You are removing yourself from a dynamic that was not serving you, that was draining you, that was making you feel small and unseen. You are creating space for something else to emerge. Maybe you will step into that space. Maybe you will realize what he had and reach out. Maybe he will finally meet you where you are. Or maybe he will not. Maybe he will let you go, and you will feel the pain of that loss, and you will grieve, and eventually, you will heal. And in that healing, you will discover that you are stronger than you thought, more resilient than you believed, more whole than you ever imagined. Jung spoke about individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, of integrating the different parts of yourself into a coherent whole. It is not a process that happens quickly. It is not something you achieve and then you're done. It is a lifelong journey, a constant unfolding, a gradual peeling away of the layers that are not truly you. And part of that process is learning to recognize when you are betraying yourself, when you are abandoning your own needs and values in order to please someone else, in order to be accepted, in order to be loved. Because true individuation requires that you honor yourself first, not in a selfish way, not in a way that disregards others, but in a way that acknowledges your own worth, your own needs, your own truth. And sometimes, honoring yourself means walking away. It means stopping the chase. It means letting silence fill the space where your words used to be. It means trusting that if this connection is meant to be, it will survive the silence. It will survive your absence. It will survive the truth of who you are when you are not performing, not explaining, not trying to convince him of your value. And if it does not survive, if the silence reveals that there was nothing substantial holding you together, then you have not lost anything real. You have only released an illusion, a hope, a story you were telling yourself about what could be. This is not easy to accept because we want to believe that love is enough, that if we just care enough, try enough, give enough, everything will work out. But love, real love, requires two people. It requires mutuality. It requires both people showing up, both people being willing to be vulnerable, both people taking the risk of being seen. And when only one person is doing that, when only one person is chasing, reaching, trying, it is not a relationship. It is a one-sided longing. And you deserve more than that. You deserve someone who meets you halfway, who sees your depth and is not afraid of it, who values your presence and does not take it for granted. So what does it look like, this stopping, this letting silence do the work? It looks like not texting him when you feel the urge. It looks like not explaining yourself when he questions your absence. It looks like not filling every silence with words, with reassurances, with attempts to keep the connection alive. It looks like letting him wonder, letting him miss you, letting him experience your absence and decide for himself whether he wants to do something about it. It looks like redirecting your attention back to yourself, to your own life, to your own interests and passions and friendships. It looks like remembering who you were before you started chasing him and reconnecting with that person. And in that reconnection, you may find that you do not miss him as much as you thought you would. You may find that the space he occupied in your mind and heart begins to fill with other things, other people, other possibilities. You may find that the constant anxiety of wondering whether he will respond, whether he cares, whether he sees you, begins to fade. And in its place, a kind of calm, a kind of clarity, a kind of self-possession that comes from no longer needing someone else to complete you. This does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you harden your heart or close yourself off to connection. It means you care in a different way. You care without attachment to the outcome. You care without needing him to care back in the same measure. You care while also caring for yourself, while also honoring your own needs, while also recognizing that you cannot make someone love you, no matter how much you want them to. And there is a kind of freedom in that recognition, a kind of release, because you are no longer carrying the weight of the relationship alone. You are no longer responsible for making it work. You are simply allowing it to be what it is, and trusting that the truth, whatever it is, will reveal itself in time. Jung understood that the unconscious speaks to us in symbols, in dreams, in the patterns we repeat, in the people we are drawn to. And often, the person we chase is not just that person. They are a symbol of something deeper, something we're trying to heal, something we're trying to prove, something we're trying to reclaim. Maybe they remind us of a parent who was emotionally unavailable, and we're trying to finally earn that parent's love by earning theirs. Maybe they represent a part of ourselves we have disowned, a part we believe is unworthy, and we're trying to prove that we are worthy by making them see us. Maybe they are simply the latest iteration of an old pattern, a familiar dynamic that feels like home even though it hurts. And when you stop chasing, when you let silence do the work, you are also interrupting that pattern. You are saying, I see what I am doing, and I am choosing differently. You are reclaiming the energy you were pouring into him and redirecting it inward, toward your own healing, your own growth, your own individuation. You are choosing to break the cycle, to step off the treadmill of endless pursuit, to stand still and see what happens when you are no longer running. What happens is this: you begin to remember yourself. You begin to reconnect with the parts of you that got lost in the chasing, the parts that were quiet and small and waiting for you to come back. You begin to feel your own presence again, not as something contingent on his response, but as something inherent, something that exists whether he sees it or not. You begin to trust yourself again, to trust your own perceptions, your own feelings, your own sense of what is true. And you begin to understand that you do not need him to validate you. You do not need him to confirm that you are worthy of love. You already are. You always were. And maybe, in that understanding, he will come back. Maybe he will notice your absence and realize what he lost. Maybe he will reach out, and this time, it will be different. This time, he will meet you where you are. This time, there will be mutuality, reciprocity, genuine connection. Or maybe he will not. Maybe he will stay silent, and you will know that he was never truly with you to begin with. And either way, you will be okay, because you will have yourself. You will have your own center, your own ground, your own sense of worth that does not depend on anyone else. This is the work. This is the path, not the loud, dramatic transformation that happens overnight, but the quiet, steady reclaiming of yourself that happens one choice at a time. One moment of not reaching out when you want it. One moment of sitting with the discomfort of silence instead of filling it. One moment of choosing yourself instead of choosing him. And over time, those moments add up. They become a new way of being, a new pattern, a new story. And in that new story, you are not the one who chases. You are not the one who begs to be seen. You are the one who knows her own worth, who honors her own needs, who offers her presence as a gift rather than a plea. You are the one who understands that love is not about convincing someone to love you, but about being yourself so fully, so authentically, that the right people are naturally drawn to you. And the wrong people, the ones who cannot meet you, the ones who take you for granted, the ones who make you feel small, simply fall away. This is not cold. This is not cruel. This is not about shutting people out or protecting yourself so much that you never risk connection again. This is about discernment, about recognizing who is capable of meeting you and who is not, about understanding that your depth, your sensitivity, your capacity for profound connection is not something to be ashamed of or to minimize. It is something to be honored, to be protected, to be offered only to those who can truly receive it. And when you stop chasing and let silence do the work, you are practicing that discernment. You are saying, I will not pour myself into a void. I will not give my energy to someone who does not value it. I will not chase someone who is running away. I will stand still, and I will wait, and I will see who comes toward me. And if no one does, if the silence stretches on and I am left alone, then I will know that I am strong enough to be alone, that I am whole enough to be alone, that my worth does not depend on someone else's presence. There is a particular kind of peace that comes with this realization. Not the peace of having everything you want, but the peace of knowing yourself, of trusting yourself, of being aligned with your own truth. It is the peace of no longer betraying yourself for the sake of connection. It is the peace of no longer making yourself small to fit into someone else's limitations. It is the peace of simply being, without apology, without justification, without the constant need to be understood. And in that peace, you may find that the right people begin to show up. Not because you are doing anything differently, but because you are no longer tolerating what does not serve you. You are no longer accepting crumbs when you deserve the whole meal. You are no longer chasing people who are walking away. You are standing in your own power, in your own worth, in your own truth, and that energy, that presence, draws people who can meet you there. People who are not afraid of your depth. People who value your presence. People who do not need to be chased because they are already moving toward you. This is what silence does. It clears the space. It removes the noise. It allows you to see what is real and what is not. It gives you back your energy, your time, your attention. It lets you focus on yourself, on your own life, on your own growth and healing and becoming. And in that focus, you become more of who you truly are. You become more aligned, more integrated, more whole. And that wholeness, that alignment, is magnetic. It draws people in, not everyone, but the right ones. The ones who can see you, who can meet you, who can love you without you having to chase them. So stop chasing him. Let silence do the work. Not as a game, not as a strategy, not as a way to manipulate him into missing you, but as a way to honor yourself, as a way to reclaim your own center, as a way to trust that if this connection is real, it will survive your absence. And if it does not, if the silence reveals that there was nothing substantial there, then you will know, and you will grieve, and you will heal, and you will move forward, stronger, wiser, more whole than you were before. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not unworthy of love. You are simply learning to love yourself enough to stop chasing people who do not see you. And that is not a loss. That is a victory, a quiet, profound, deeply personal victory that no one else may ever see or understand. But that changes everything, because it changes you. It changes the way you relate to yourself, the way you move through the world, the way you allow others to treat you. And in that change, you become free. Free from the endless loop of chasing and hoping and wondering. Free to simply be. Free to trust that you are enough, exactly as you are, whether he sees it or not. And maybe, in that freedom, he will finally see you. Or maybe he will not. But either way, you will be okay. because you will have found something far more valuable than his attention. You will have found yourself.